Hey guys, welcome back to Tipharot. It's me Matt here, and today this is going to be a very long one, and this is going to be audio only. So this is actually the first part of a consultation that I posted on my channel a while back. Basically, someone let me share the consultation that I did with them with you guys. And I already posted the second part, which was a video on this channel, but the first part was audio, and that's what I'm sharing today. So the person this consultation was for said that they'd been having some trouble with social interactions, and they'd also recently started seeing a therapist, and they wanted to know my thoughts on cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT, as well as how that links in with things like meditation and lucid dreaming. Now obviously consultations like this are designed to tackle a specific problem that someone has come to me with, so you might not have this problem or not be interested in these subjects, and that's totally okay. But if you are, maybe you've been interested in cognitive behavioural therapy, or perhaps you're facing issues with social interactions yourself or something like that, then definitely stay tuned and listen through to the end. So without further ado, here is the full audio from that consultation. It sounds like you're familiar with what CBT is, and it sounds like you're already seeing a CBT therapist. So I don't believe I need to tell you what it is, but I will start off by talking about my personal opinion on it. So personally, I think CBT is very useful. I have used it myself as a way to improve my own life. It has helped with my insomnia, and it has helped a lot with my anxiety. So if it wasn't evident, I am a huge proponent of CBT. I think it is fantastic. Now with that in mind, now that you know how I personally feel about it, let's actually discuss it a little bit. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to reiterate something that you may or may not have heard me say before. Depending on which video it was in which you heard me talking about CBT, I may or may not have mentioned this. But I highly recommend getting your hands on a book called Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy. It's a book by Dr. David Burns, and it is meant to be like a self-help book teaching you CBT concepts for overcoming depression. But I want to stress that while the book is aimed at people with depression, it is completely relevant regardless of if that's your issue or not. And I didn't buy the book to help me with depression, I bought it to help me with anxiety, and I found that it's been fantastic for that. One of the great things about the book is that it works well with you doing actual therapy as well, but it's also something that you can apply in your own time. So, I don't know how often you have your therapy sessions, but let's say that you have one a week, or maybe even less than that, maybe once every couple of weeks or something. That's a lot of time in between where, you're probably applying what the therapist has taught you, but there might be some time where you're not sure what to do next. If you have, a reference like that, you have a book like that, you can be reading it, you can be better understanding the concepts that your therapist has taught you, you can be trying out some of the various exercises in the book and applying those. And I think in general, this combination will lead to better results. And I also think it's just handy to kind of have a quick reference guide. If you're trying to identify a cognitive distortion in your thinking or something, you can literally just flick to the page in the book where they're all listed and quickly take a look. So yeah, if you don't have your hands on that book already, I do recommend it. I don't think it's particularly expensive if you buy the paperback one. But one of the first things mentioned in the book is that we tend to trust our feelings, when in actual fact our thoughts often lead to our feelings. And this is actually something that I've talked about myself before. I generally believe that there's kind of this cycle that we go through in life. We have experiences that lead to thoughts, that lead to feelings, that lead to actions, that lead to our future experiences. We often think that to change things in our life, we have to change our actions. And while that's true to a degree, I think ultimately if you want to change more of your actions, you need to go further back in the chain. Now, you can't change your experiences really without changing your actions. So the best thing, the earliest thing in the chain that you can change is your thoughts, because when you change your thoughts, you're going to feel differently, and when you feel differently, you're going to act differently, and then because you act differently, you're going to get better results. So thoughts are sort of like the break in the chain, the break in all of the vicious cycles that we have, and by actually identifying where the problems in our thoughts are and changing them, we can radically change our entire life. I also think something that can be helpful to remember when doing CBT is that thoughts don't just influence our feelings. Thoughts are also basically like our glasses through which we see the world. We like to see ourselves as humans as, seeing the world as it is, experiencing the world as it is, but in reality that's not very true. We see colours on objects because our eyes have photoreceptors that react to the light in a certain way. It doesn't mean the object actually is that specific colour, it's just a way that our eye reacts to that information and perceives it. We hear roughly between 20 Hz and 20 kHz if we have perfect hearing, which most people don't. And, there are other animals like dogs that can hear up to 50 kHz and so on. There's huge portions of hearing that are just inaccessible to us. We look at an object and instead of seeing all of these tiny atoms vibrating and moving around, we see a solid block, a thing that is there and is stationary. And we also don't know what of these things that we see and hear that we can even trust. If you look at your dreams as an example, you have dreams where you can feel things, you can taste things, you can see things, you can touch things. Everything around you feels real. You can't feel any other body, just your dream body. So it is evident that the mind is capable of generating full sensory experiences. And in reality, that's how we perceive our reality around us right now. You're not feeling the world around you and seeing the world around you and hearing the world around you quite literally. You're absorbing all of that information and your brain is sort of rendering it for you the way that you do see and feel and hear it and so on. And part of the filter for all of this information is your thoughts. I actually have an experiment that you can do to prove this. Tell yourself, I'm going to see a lot of red cars today, and then go out and actually actively look for red cars. Take a walk, from one side of your town to the other or something, and just look for red cars. What you'll likely notice is that you run into an awful lot of red cars on the way. So what does that mean? Does that mean because you decided that you were going to see a lot of red cars that all of these red cars just appeared out of the ether and, plopped down onto the street? No, it doesn't. But what it does mean is that because you've decided that's what you're going to look for, you've set your focus, you've basically adjusted, the lenses through which you see the world to focus on that particular bit of information, i.e. red cars. And so you're going to see them everywhere. You're going to notice just how many of them that there are. And you might even be shocked at just how many there are, because in the past you probably haven't been focused on looking for red cars. And that's the thing. If you go out tomorrow and you do the same thing for white cars, you might notice that the numbers of cars aren't exactly the same, but you'll probably be just as surprised by how many white cars there are. When you're not focused on something, when your brain isn't looking for it, then it kind of blanks it out. And this is just one of the many examples of how our thoughts alter how we perceive the world. Now, if you think about how much easier it is to spot a red car when you're looking for a red car, or a white car when you're looking for a white car, then this can also be applied to experiences in life. If you're actively optimistic and looking for positive experiences in life, then you're much more likely to find them than if you're doing the opposite. If you're pessimistic and you feel like, life is one big struggle and everything is going terribly, then what happens? Well, you look for it just like those red cars. You look for evidence that life is terrible, and sure enough, because there's plenty of evidence for both sides, you're going to find plenty of evidence that life is terrible, and you're going to feel even worse, and it's just a vicious cycle. If you do be optimistic and you say, life is actually good, there's lots of good things in the world, and you think of some personal examples that apply to you, and you go out looking for more, then you're going to find all of these positive experiences, all of these great things to further back up your belief that life is good. So with something like CBT, as you're addressing your negative distortions in your thinking and you're replacing those with more positive and optimistic thoughts, what you're going to find is that your filter for viewing the world changes. You stop looking for all the bad in the world and you start finding all of the good. And you'll find that as this happens, social interactions get a lot easier. This is something that I've found myself with my anxiety. I find that as I'm able to notice all the positive in my interactions and experiences, I'm able to take that to heart and actually change those deep-seated beliefs about my ability to socialise. And then as I get more confident in my ability to socialise, I'm able to do it more easily with less anxiety. And so it's kind of a positive cycle. Now, you asked me if I saw a connection between CBT and meditation and lucid dreaming. So let's discuss that. Let's discuss meditation first. Well, meditation, I think, is the perfect accompaniment to CBT because it quiets the mind. We basically put the brakes on this automatic process of having a negative thought and, a negative interpretation of the world and a negative emotion. Because I mean, let's be real, let's be honest here. When you heard me describing what I was just describing about how, if you're optimistic, you have better experiences and find them. And if you're pessimistic, you find all the bad in the world. Well, it's easy enough to say that. But going from a pessimistic attitude to an optimistic one is a lot easier said than done. Because as I said, it's kind of a cycle. All of these negative thoughts that you're already having are making things more negative for you. So it can be hard to break out of that. Meditation puts the brakes on the whole thing. It says, okay, for a little while, we're not going to have any thoughts at all. Or, we're going to have some thoughts, but we're not going to give them any attention. And so by doing this, you hold back from getting more negative thoughts and more negative emotions and more negative experiences. And so now you have a chance to introduce some positivity into the mix. I think the next area where meditation really helps is that if you consistently meditate every day and you meditate for a decent length of time, you're soon going to realize through those meditation sessions and experience this firsthand that many of our thoughts are automatic. You will be sitting there and you are not actively generating these thoughts, they just come up of their own accord. And ordinarily we identify with all of our thoughts. If we think it, then it's us thinking it. That's just how we see it. And so when we have an irrational thought or a negative thought, we just accept it as it is. This is one of the problems with OCD. With OCD, you have these intrusive thoughts and you accept them as your own thoughts. One of the best ways that you can deal with something like OCD is to first recognize that they are just intrusive thoughts. You haven't decided to have this thought. It has just popped up and you don't have to agree with it, accept it, or identify with it. You can say, okay, that thought popped up, but it's not mine. I don't believe that. Go away. And meditation helps you learn this. And it's the same with everything. If you have anxiety about social interactions, for example, then you're going to have thoughts that pop up automatically. What if people don't like me? What if I say something weird and make a fool of myself? What if people remember this stupid thing I did, 6 years ago? All of this stuff might be weighing on your mind. All of these thoughts might be popping up. But meditation helps you take a step back and realize that, hey, just because a thought's popped up doesn't mean that we have to accept it. We can say no to that thought and then we can replace it with a better, more positive one. The next connection that I think the two have is that meditation actually gives us some insight into why we have certain thoughts and how those thoughts affect our emotions and actions. And I think that's a big part of CBT as well, which is one of the reasons why I recommend it, is that you get a bit of insight into your thought process. You're going to learn that you do have all of these distortions in your thinking. You're going to learn that you have a lot of irrational thoughts that don't make much sense. And then you're going to learn how those can negatively impact you and why you should make an effort to change your thinking. So here, if you couple CBT and meditation together, you can get faster insight into your thoughts and you're going to be able to more easily recognize when your thinking is getting distorted. Now, as well as actually putting the brakes on things and giving us a bit of insight and an opportunity to change our thoughts, meditation also simply reduces anxiety symptoms to begin with. It makes us feel calmer, it makes us feel more relaxed. And that's useful when you're doing therapy. There's a reason why therapy and medication are often prescribed together. Because if you take medication that makes you feel a little bit better, then while you're talking to your therapist, while you're learning about your thoughts and your actions and how to better manage them, then you're feeling a little bit better. So you're feeling a bit more motivated and you're feeling a bit more capable of actually taking it on. Meditation, much like medication, can actually help here because as you feel better from meditating, it's going to be easier to apply the things that you've learned in therapy. Now don't worry, I didn't forget, you also mentioned lucid dreaming, and I wanted to mention this because I talked earlier about the fact that we perceive our reality through the lens of our thoughts, and learning to lucid dream, I think, is a great way of reminding yourself of this, because when you spend enough time in lucid dreams and you see just how real these dreams can feel, then you know just how deceptive perception can be. And more importantly than that, you also learn and discover just how much your thoughts alter your reality. In a lucid dream, your thoughts can make a wall disappear. And in real life, they might not physically make a wall disappear, but, figuratively speaking, they can. They can make an obstacle disappear from your path because, all you had to do was think outside the box and find a way around it instead of, continually trying to go through the wall. I think by seeing how powerful your thoughts are in the context of a lucid dream, it helps us get acquainted with just how powerful they can be in waking life as well. Because I'll be honest, I always liked the idea that, changing your thinking would change your life and would make you happier and would make you achieve all your goals and be able to do whatever you wanted and all of that. But I don't know if I really believed it when I was younger. It was actually after I started lucid dreaming and I started to just see just how powerful the mind is, that it could create these entire worlds and that I could manipulate objects with my mind and so on. When I started to see that, I started to think, well, if it can do all of that in a lucid dream, then I think I've been discounting what it can do when I'm awake as well. Because maybe I can't pick up a mountain and move it with my mind, but my mind still is creating my entire interpretation of this world, and it is deciding all of the actions I take. And the actions that I take are ultimately what are going to lead to all of the experiences that I have. So at the end of the day, the thoughts are still the root of everything, just the same as they are in a dream. Another thing that you may already be aware of is that lucid dreams are a great place for practicing exposure therapy. Now, I will add the caveat that this may or may not work for you with social interactions. I find that for me personally, interacting with dream characters in a dream does not give me any sort of social anxiety whatsoever, because I know that they're not real people. I know they're just in my mind, and so I'm not anxious. So in that sense, I can't face my fear of socializing. But I can do other things. I can, for example, practice. If I'm going to, go for a job interview or give a speech or something like that, I can practice it in a lucid dream beforehand, and that can make me feel a little bit less nervous when I actually go ahead and do it. Alongside being a great place to practice and to face our fears, lucid dreaming can, of course, much like meditation, be used for insight and introspection. By actually taking some time to write down your dreams each night, as you should be doing, you actually have some material that you can then analyze later. Take some time to actually go over your dream journal, look at your dreams and try to understand them and why your subconscious is producing those dreams. If you're not familiar with the best way to analyze dreams, I have made some videos on it, but the simple gist of it is I just ask myself what I intuitively feel the dream represents, because intuition comes from the subconscious. So if you intuitively feel it represents that, then guess what? It does. And if you use this and you actually analyze your dreams, you're going to learn a bit more about yourself, your thinking patterns, what you're feeling at the moment, and you're going to see your progress as well with therapy. Now that's with your regular dreams, but with your lucid dreams, you can even go a step further. You can speak to your subconscious directly and you can ask it. You can even actually ask it for dream analysis help. This is a little secret that's kind of useful. You can go to your subconscious mind in a lucid dream and you can go, what was that dream yesterday supposed to represent? You might not always get a clear answer, but sometimes you actually will. The subconscious will literally spell it out for you. And on top of that, you can actually just ask for some general insight. You can ask for some advice on how you can deal with social interactions better. You can ask for, if they make you anxious. You can ask for why they make you so anxious and some insight into that. And as you ask your subconscious these questions, you're better understanding your own mind. And so all of these things really do go hand in hand. Lucid dreaming, meditation, regular dreams as well, and analysing them, and CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. The one other thing I'd throw into the mix personally is exercise. I personally recommend some resistance training, but even just regular cardio as well. I find that when you're training, you're basically learning to overcome more challenging obstacles each time that you go to the gym. And so it helps make it easier to deal with those challenging things in life that we need to overcome. And on top of that, you also start feeling better as well. If you're out of shape and you get in shape, then obviously you feel better because of that. But just exercising in itself, even if you're already in great shape, will actually improve your mood. So that's definitely another one to consider adding to the mix if you're not doing it already. So I hope this answers the questions that you had. But before we actually go and before we finish this off, the other thing that I wanted to mention is the time of year, because it is, of course, coming up to New Year. So I think this is a great time to tackle this sort of thing. I know New Year's resolutions can feel like a bit of a gimmick, and in some senses they are. Most people, they set resolutions, and by the end of January, they've lost motivation. But I think it is a good time to look over your past year and to set some goals for your next year. So if you're trying to get better with social interactions, set some goals for some real progress that you can achieve over the next year. One of the things that's really powerful about New Year's is that we do view our life in blocks of time periods. I'm sure you've noticed this yourself, but sometimes, if you've had a bad year, things haven't gone to plan, then when New Year's coming up, you get excited. You look at this blank slate ahead of you, this entire year that you can make so much better than last year. And I think that's why people do set New Year's resolutions. I think it's also why people tend to fail New Year's resolutions, because basically they see the new year as a blank slate. They've made no mistakes yet. It can be a perfect year where they make endless progress on all their goals, and so they're infinitely motivated to work on those goals. Now, as the year starts off great, they're working hard on their goals, but as soon as they get their first slip-ups, their first dwindle in motivation, or their first mistake, or their first day where they couldn't go to the gym because they were feeling ill or whatever, then now the year is no longer perfect, and that motivation they had from this completely blank slate where they were going to do everything perfectly is gone. So don't make that mistake either. Don't make the mistake of setting some resolutions that are just dependent on everything going perfectly, but actually set some measurable and achievable goals for yourself. And this might be something that it's worth discussing with your therapist as well. You can ask them for an honest, appraisal of where you're at with your social interactions and so on, and see what they think. What do they think that you should be aiming to achieve over the next year with that? And then figure out a plan together with them for how you're actually going to make that happen. So yeah, that was part of a consultation that I did. Thank you for sticking around to the end if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed or got something useful out of it. Anyway, make sure you subscribe and enable all notifications if you want to stay up to date with my videos. And if you want to keep watching, check out one of the videos linked on screen. Go watch that and I'll see you there soon. Take care.